I'm talking to Harold Kraft, gunner for Rebel Gunships, and you were a gunner from when to when, Harold?
From from June of 1967 until February of '68.
Okay, you were there for TET 68, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Matter of fact, it was right in the middle of TET when I left Vietnam.
Oh, you left at a good time.
Yeah, it was hiding under the bunks with no weapon while everybody was shooting each other.
All right, now tell me a little bit about the Rebels.
Well, the Rebels, I came out of infantry. I was in infantry for 6 months in Vietnam, and for about 5 months, and I wanted to get out of infantry actually. So I had applied for different things in the service, and they came in and got me to try out for the Rebels. And Major Cantrell was the leader of the Rebels at that time. He took me up and had me shoot at some different items to prove I could handle a machine gun, and they brought me on. And of course, as you know, after your first combat, then you're officially entered into the Rebels.
Right.
And you get your Rebel badge and all the things that go with it. So that was my. I didn't know anything about Rebels except for the fact they supported us when I was in infantry. And but then I learned that there was a pretty elite group of individuals that took a lot of pride in what they did and the support they gave for the troops. And I assumed that pride also.
And I don't remember. It took a while to get for the initiation into the Rebels.
Well, they would after you had your one or two combats, I forget which one it was. We actually had to go up and actually support troops and fire weapons at enemies. Then you were officially in. Then they would wait until we had 2 or 3 initiations to do at one time.
Right.
And then they'd have the initiation party, which was basically they had jalapeno peppers soaking in hot sauce, and they'd been soaking in hot sauce for as long as the Rebels had been around. And the initiation process was to put one of those in your mouth and chew on it until you were told you could swallow.
Right, and everybody had to give you a thumbs up.
That's
to
exactly
swallow.
Right.
And there was always somebody that would give you a thumbs down for some stupid reason,
Yep.
right?
That's exactly right. You could bet on that every time. But and then of course you had to consume a beverage after you swallowed the jalapeno, and they let you sit there for a few minutes in the heat, and then they would give you a beverage to consume to help cool you off a little bit.
Right, and you had to guzzle it.
I don't know whether you went through it or not, but they also had a tradition of taking you upside down and putting you in a barrel of water.
Yeah, I lucked out of that one.
I did too. Somehow I missed that one. But that was another part of the initiation. I remember that part. Somehow I missed it, thank goodness. But at that point, then you could wear the patch, and you were part of the official Rebel crew.
And wearing that patch and getting your wings was to me the proudest day of my life.
That was a real special thing. And like I said, the pride of the group that had been established over the years there in Vietnam, you couldn't help but be proud when you were finally a part of that group officially.
Right. I can remember walking into the NCO club and infantry guys sitting at a table and seeing that Rebel patch and calling you over and start buying you beers. It was just so nice to be looked up to.
But coming from infantry, we got rationed out some food that came out occasionally, and C rations the other times. But being one of the Rebels, I don't know if you remember or not, but you could walk into the mess hall at any time during a 24-hour period, and they'd fix you something to eat.
Exactly, yeah.
Because we were supporting we also were supporting the people there on base, and so you always had that privilege of being one of privilege to do almost anything.
And remember how much that first sergeant hated us because of that?
Yeah. I do.
He hated the fact that we didn't have to pull duty or
no, didn't have to go, didn't have to do any guard duty or anything else.
Right.
And had all the people helping us, because most of the people were happy to have us around, but a few of them resented those things. But I remember that as much as anything. That was part of the pride. You were a very important part of the base, and also for the troops. Troops, thought the world of us.
Right, and another part of the pride to me was we were the only gunship platoon that would scramble during an attack on our own base camp.
That's right.
And I remember, when they would throw rockets and mortars in on us, they would throw them down the flight line to keep us from taking off. And running out through those things was...
That horn would go off, and we'd leave our hooch and run right out there and get in the helicopter, wouldn't we?
Right. And that was scary.
Hit it several times.
And your crew chief, Farmer, he was my crew chief for a while. And he had the worst luck of anyone.
He was accident prone.
He was. I remember one time we were running out during a scramble, during a rocket attack, and a rocket hit on the fight line, and a piece of shrapnel from the rocket hit him right in the name tag. And the medic said that the only thing that saved him from that piece of shrapnel going into his heart was the name tag. That's the only thing that kept it from going all the way through.
And he also, I don't know if you remember now, he jumped off the helicopter one time. He had his wedding band on, and it hooked on something and almost tore his finger off. Another time he was coming off the top of the helicopter working on it, and he hooked his leg, and he bent it backwards going down. He hopped around for several weeks with that. So he definitely had the worst luck of anybody.
I
got shot down with him too. So
yeah, right. Now he died several years ago.
I know, he said he died from cancer, didn't he?
It was either cancer or heart attack. I don't remember which one it was.
Yeah, somebody was telling about that. I liked him a lot. He was a really nice guy.
He was. Well, he got shot down with me too. When I got shot down.
He really did have some bad luck, didn't he?
Yeah. In fact, when he got shot down with me, he got medevac back to the States because his back was broken.
Oh.
He broke his back, I broke mine, and Dennis Acton broke his. And I think Dennis and I, well, I'm not so sure. Yeah, I think Dennis was misdiagnosed also. They diagnosed me as having muscle contusions instead of a broken back. And it wasn't until 21 months later when I got out of the Army, I refused to sign a medical release, and they sent me to the VA, and the VA found out that it had been broken. And I had, it was called a compression fracture and a compression fracture. And I had, I think, 2 crushed vertebrae or something. It kept me from getting into the state police to fly helicopter because I used to be 5'10", and with the crushed vertebrae I was only 5'9 and a half, so they wouldn't let me in.
How about that? We carried 10,000 rounds of M60.
Yeah, we carried 10,000 rounds for the miniguns, and in my ship I carried 1,800 rounds for my door gun, and my crew chief did the same. And then we had, what was it?
You carried more than 1,800, didn't you?
No, 1,800 was all my box. Well, in fact, we weren't supposed to carry 18. I think we were only supposed to carry 1,200 rounds, I believe. But we had, I had these big wooden door boxes, and I could put 1,800 rounds in mine.
I remember that's what we had. I thought we carried more rounds than those things. Because I remember when I was in infantry, my first firefight, I ran out of ammo. And it never happened again. The average troop carries 80 pounds of equipment in Vietnam, and I guarantee you I was carrying 100 because I carried more ammo than anybody else in the place. Because I said this never happened again. I'll never run out of ammo again.
There's not a more feeling of helplessness than being in combat with no ammo.
A gun, no bullets. It's not fun.
Right.
flying and stuff. And the helicopters, I always carried all I could. I thought we carried more than that, honestly. But then again, we shot them all up in about 5 minutes.
It didn't take long.
2 or 3 run-throughs, and we were back reloading again. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that very well.
And then, sometimes if our miniguns went down, we could take the minigun ammo out of the tray and use that in our door guns.
That's right. When they would stick up once in a while, we could use that. The same feed, just a different kind of gun.
I tell you, keeping my guns clean was the most important thing to me.
Yes, use that cream stuff and just fill that thing up with it every time.
Yeah, but I very seldom had a malfunction with my guns.
Yeah, I used to go through those tubes of cream like crazy. I never had one stop on me. I had a round left in one when we landed one time. You heavy spinning things to clear them.
Yeah.
I spun that thing and it fired around.
That never happened to me. I never had one.
Everybody did, including me.
Yeah.
Yeah, how you put it between your legs and twirled it through the barrels.
Yeah.
That was a scary thought when that thing went off.
You would turn it. What was it? 1 click clockwise, right, to clear it.
Yep. And then you could reload and do all your cleaning and all the stuff. They have to worry about it.
And another story that I don't know if you remember, but we had a problem with minigun bolts. We would use our bolts until they broke, and we couldn't get any.
Yep.
And somebody found out that the Air Force, the Puff the Magic Dragons, they used their minigun bolts one time and threw them away. So someone from our unit went to the Air Force and got all their used minigun bolts and brought them to us. And to us, they were like Christmas gifts, man. They were brand new to us.
Yeah.
So we would use the Air Force's old minigun bolts. And the M60, that very seldom failed.
That was probably our armament guy that took care of that for us.
Well, I asked John, and John doesn't remember doing it, but he does remember it happening, but he doesn't remember who did it.
But we didn't have much communication with the Air Force. The only time I ever had contact with the Air Force when they flew too close to us in support of troops and would shake us, take the air away from us sometimes. We'd drop about 50 foot.
Yeah.
And they thought it was funny. I remember that.
So tell me about on the mission when you and Hartley got shot down. What kind of mission was it?
Well, the North Vietnamese. This was December the 24th, Christmas Eve of 1967, and the Tet Offensive was all but ready to take off. And we got a call to go out to support the ARVN troops, and it was actually close to Saigon. And when we flew in, Captain Major Cantrell was the pilot on the one I was on, and he was lead pilot also. And we flew in pretty low, possibly even too low for what we were going into. And they had 50 caliber machine guns sitting in the highway. And when we flew in, they opened up on us. And of course, as usual, Major Cantrell veered off and up to try to avoid the shots. And we took her around in the engine. And I remember him asking me to look back and assess the damage. And we used to always do that on the left side. And I looked behind me, and all I could see was a ball of fire. So at that point in time, I really didn't think we were. I'd seen the helicopter blow up on a refueling deck from the sparks. I figured this was going to blow up also. But anyway, I conveyed to him what we had, and of course, the time he was giving the Mayday signal out, and he actually flew into jungle trees. it wasn't a lot of jungle there. It was more clear than it was anything else. But he flew into these tall trees, and just before he hit the trees, he pulled the rudder back and put the helicopter in a slant, and then he just laid it over and actually hit the trees and took it right down with the trees to the ground. And that's probably why I don't have a broken back at this time. I know I was totally impressed with how he did it, because I really didn't think we had a chance at all. And but he put it down really very, very gently compared to what we had. One person hurt, the co-pilot, and I can't remember which one it was now. He had a hurt leg where the trees and all came in on us and everything. Of course, the helicopter, during that time, the fire went out. And that was to me was as phenomenal as anything, because you know how volatile that fuel was.
Yeah. Was the helicopter upright or was it on its side?
It was leaning on its right side.
Okay.
But it was still upright. Everything was busted off of it, and it was pretty well charred from the back, from the engine back. And I remember that from when they went and got it and brought it back, and it looked like it'd been through fire damage. But he did an excellent job of landing the helicopter. When he landed the helicopter, we actually were about 50 to 100 feet away from a hooch. And so that gives you some idea what it was a populated area. At that point, I really didn't do anything. Major Cantrell told me I was the infantry guy to take over, and all I did was set up a perimeter. I set up a perimeter around the helicopter with the three of us, and Major Cantrell stayed at the helicopter on the radio, talking to our second chopper, and also to the ones that came in and actually brought us out. But we were there when we set up a perimeter around.
What time of day was this?
Huh?
What time of day was this?
When it was nighttime, we went out. It was Christmas Eve, dark, and by this time it's probably 1 o'clock in the morning, because we got out before daylight actually came up. But you could hear the North Vietnamese troops in a way coming. You know, you could just about feel them. So we had to get out. I mean, that was the major thing. Was we were not equipped to handle any kind of a combat situation against the kind of troops that they had. It was North Vietnamese regulars that had shot us down. And like I say, I think this was part of the Tet Offensive.
Right.
That we actually got stumbled upon. I think the South Vietnamese army had actually stumbled upon them, and that's how we got involved with it and found out they were hiding in a small section of woods, much like they did against us at Phu Loi. Remember that little small patch of jungle that was next to us?
Yeah.
And we had a whole company in there. We didn't know it. And these were very much like that, I think. But Major Cantrell stayed on the radio the whole time, and of course our unit couldn't come down and get us, because our helicopters wouldn't have picked up an extra person, even though we had to fly with all the weight.
Right. We had too much ammo and stuff.
Yeah. We just getting off the runway. Remember?
That's true. Yeah.
Tried to get them off the ground.
Yeah.
And so. But then the crossbows, which was a unit of gunships very much like us, except for they flew in different situations.
Well, they were from the 1st Aviation Brigade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And they flew. They came. They heard the Mayday and came to it. And during the communication, they were going to come down and get us, and there wasn't much of an area for them to come into, really. It was really a real tight little spot, but Major Cantrell flashed a light, the front beam light on the helicopter a couple of times, which scared me to death because I figured everybody knew what was at then. But they came down, and in my mind, from what I can remember, I didn't see any troops, but I really think if they hadn't come down within the next 30 minutes, we probably weren't going to walk out of there.
Well, prior to that, during the night, weren't they firing mortars at you?
Well, they were trying to, but they didn't know where we were at.
Right, and Hartley Farmer wanted to open up on them, and you kept him from firing because you didn't want to reveal your position.
I told not to make a move because we really didn't. They were not finding us. The mortars were going off in different areas. And what they were doing random shots to see if we reacted to get a better beat on where we were at because we didn't have any lights on or anything at that
right.
And so yeah, the mortars were not close. They were random and they were all around us, but they were not endangering us because they didn't know where we were at really. But then next thing I remember, and I see this helicopter coming out of the air and come down and everybody got on.
All four of you got on the same ship?
All the four of us got on the same helicopter.
And that was a gunship?
It was a gunship.
Wow.
It must have been newer than ours. It must have been empty. But we all got on the same gunship and flew out. And, you know, I say we all got on the same gunship. But you know what? We may not have. Because I was the last one to leave. I was the farthest away from where they came down at. And the noise seemed to be coming from my area that was coming at us. And
you mean the NVA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was the last one to run to the helicopter. But I just remember one helicopter is all I remember. And I remember diving on top of somebody getting into it. And I remember shots going off as we left. But my recollection was one helicopter. But you know, you think about it, it may have been the second one I got on.
Yeah.
Things get a little bit difficult to remember when you're
if they were
scared to death.
Yeah, if they were Charlie models and empty, they could have taken 4 people. But if they were B models, or if they were C models and had full ammo, I don't see how they could have taken anybody.
They couldn't have done it, could they? And most of my memories aren't bad memories of Vietnam. I don't dwell on the things that I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm the same way. There's a few memories. But to me, I don't know, the killing, you know, when I hear someone talk about a lot of killing and stuff, I figure they were remps and, you know, they never had a gun in their hand. But when I think about the Vietnam stories, it's mostly about the good times and the strange times.
You know, I'm not one of these that goes to bed at night and starts dreaming about all the bad things that happened. You know, I just don't do it. Now I hear people talk about it, and all I can take for it is that they're different personalities from me, and the other good thing I remember about or fun thing about flying is we went up over 10,000 feet one time to see how the helicopter would go. And who's the gentleman in Midwest, the warrant officer that?
Don Ulrich.
Yeah, he was the pilot, because we and I talked about that at the reunion a couple of years ago. And I remember I asked the question, how would a helicopter go? And of course, all of us being kids, he said, I don't know, let's find out. And we kept going up and up, and I remember the air was getting so thin we was having trouble breathing. And he said we went over 10,000 feet in the air that night.
Well, if I remember correctly, the movies that I have on the internet, some of them were shot when we did that, because you were in the other helicopter, and I was, I don't know if I was lead ship or wing ship, but we were up and there was all these puffy little clouds below us. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was everything, and then little dots down below.
Yeah, yeah.
But I thought that was the coolest thing. I remember, I remember thinking how neat that was.
And it was cold when you get up that high too.
Yeah, yeah. Temperature was chilly. And I remember another time at the door blowing off on me too. Well, not on me, but on the crew chief. He was going to close his door. It got cold, and the doors kept on going. Almost took him with it.
Oh, well, that happened to me.
It happened to my crew chief. I think it might have been Farmer it happened to. Now I think about it.
No, what happened with me was Benny was my crew chief, and we were flying. We were at a special forces camp, and we were flying. We were waiting for the artillery to stop so we could go in and make our gun runs. And Benny decided he was cold, and he closed his door. Well, to do that properly, you tell the pilots slow down, and then both the crew chief and the gunner close their doors together, and then nothing will happen. But Benny just decided to close his door, and I'm sitting there, and you know those little hasps that we used to have on our doors, you know, when we closed them, you lock them from the outside.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm sitting there, my door's open, I'm sitting there, and I've got my hand just draped over that hasp. And when Benny closed his door, my door got sucked off, and I went with it. And my left leg was between the rocket pod and the bottom of the ship, and my right leg was over the minigun barrels, and my right hand was holding on to the back of the minigun motor. And I don't remember how I got back in, but I got back in and I plugged my helmet in, and I told the pilot that we just lost our door. And then the reunion before last, I was telling that story, and Dennis was a pilot that night, Dennis Acton, and he was saying that he heard something, and he looked around, and he said, "Where's Vladi?" Because I wasn't there. He couldn't see me. I was outside the helicopter. And what was really funny about that, my ship had been down for maintenance. And while it was down for maintenance, someone took the keeper side of my monkey strap off to use in their helicopter. And they didn't put it back on when my ship came out of maintenance. And we got scrambled out, and I jump in the helicopter and we take off, and I go to put my monkey strap on, and I don't have a buckle. So I had it tied around my right leg. I didn't have that thing buckled on. It was just tied in, you know, just a simple granny knot, or it might have been a square knot. I don't know. If I was lucky, it was a square knot. But it was just tied around my upper leg. And that was the night I got sucked out. Yeah, you don't close doors on helicopters without telling people.
No, it doesn't work too good at all. And the other thing I remember, because the flying was probably the most enjoyable thing I ever did. I loved it. But I remember we talking about the first sergeant again. I mean, we used to fly in, and we'd stand on the tread and do spread wing type things, Statue of Liberty type stuff, going in landing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they call us in and chew us out for doing that, you know. And I used to love that. Stay outside the helicopter on the rudder and
on the skid.
Yeah, on the skid. I'm trying to think what it was called now. The skid. I love that. You know, I do that every time if they'd let me. But and I remember going hunting for animals and shooting. I remember shooting a tripod on the minigun when I was trying to shoot them birds. Remember the little white birds that were so small, flying around.
Egrets or something.
And I think I put 9 rounds in the tripod and got chewed out by the first sergeant again for that.
In the tripod?
The minigun pod.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the green part that stuck out there, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I think I put 9 holes in that one.
How many times did you put rounds in the skids?
Oh yeah, hey, at nighttime especially. No telling how many times I did that.
Yeah, I remember shooting up the footpad on the skids a few times, and I was saying at one of the reunions that, you know, I remember shooting the footpads, but I don't think I ever shot anything else. And Dennis Acton turned around and looked at me and he said, "No, you got a chin bubble once."
That's funny.
And you know, the other thing is we were, I think we were the only gunships that used punjies on our guns rather than hard mounts.
Yeah, I think we were too. Everybody else had the rigid, which I can't understand how they could have done a really good job with it set in a still rigid frame like that.
Right, because you couldn't lean out and shoot under the helicopter.
We could lean out, you know, a long ways and do a lot of damage.
Right.
And support as it made the turns, you know, and that was important right there.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how they did that. I think we were the only one. I knew all the troop carriers had locked in, and that's understandable probably. But I'm not sure about the others.
I know at one time they were going to try to make us put them on, but we all rebelled against it, and we kept our punji cords.
Well, I remember when I first went there with the rebels. They put me in a helicopter. The Hog had the grenade launcher, and it had dual.
Oh, the Frog.
Frog. Yeah, it had dual 60s on it.
Right.
And they were set on a frame.
Oh, that was a Hog, I think, with the dual 60s.
Yeah, that was a Hog.
Yeah, it had 48 rockets.
I hated it, and I got out of that thing as quick as I could. So I only stayed in that thing about a week or two because that was, and it had terrible problems with jamming up.
Yeah, that was Danny Breckenridge was the crew chief on that.
Yeah, Breckenridge was crew chief. Yeah, and I thought that was horrible.
Now, who was the crew chief that you flew with most of the time?
Well, Larry Palmer and Gary Young were the ones I flew with. Almost all the time. Yeah. Unless I went up for somebody else or somebody was not in any condition to go up.
Yeah.
Sometimes the pilots weren't in condition to go up. I remember flying a couple of times when I got a chance to shoot the miniguns because we didn't have a pilot that was in the right condition.
Yeah.
And which would tickle me greatly because I got a chance to fly. Also, Major Cantrell wasn't liked by most of the troops, but he used to take me to when he'd go to another base to see his girlfriend, and he'd always take me with him, and I got to fly the helicopter there and back. And I learned a whole lot about flying.
Yeah.
Doing that with him. And
a few people didn't like him, but I really liked him. I thought he was a good guy.
Hey, he treated me great. Whenever he wanted to go see his girlfriend, and he had to take somebody with him. He'd always come and get me if I was not on the call.
Yeah.
And I remember him show me how to do certain things with it and fly it. And I remember I almost wrecked it, almost crashed it, getting out of the hangar. Those metal makeshift hangars we had.
Revetments, yeah.
I almost wiped it out there one day with him, but I learned how to fly a lot. As a matter of fact, he offered to send me back to flight school, but it meant another tour of duty in Vietnam, and I just didn't want to take that risk actually.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to do it. I was ready. It was one of the things I probably loved as much as anything.
Were you by any chance on a mission with me one time when we went to cover a downed jet pilot? He was dropping napalm.
We ended up in, Well, now the one I went to, and I'm not sure if it's the same one you went to or not. We actually went over into Laos or Cambodia with the pilot. Actually, the one I saw, the pilot actually crashed outside of Vietnam, and it was either. I mean, remember we were flying support over at the, right to the right to the border.
Yeah, right at the Paris Peak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that's where we were at, and one was doing his part, Maypom, and got caught up in it, and we saw him, and we actually flew out of Vietnam into, I guess it's Cambodia, but he never got out of he never got out of the plane all the way. He was on the ground next to the plane. His chute was just laying there, and he wasn't moving, so we didn't do anything else. We called in with coordinates and got back out.
That may have been the same one. I remember him.
Well, it was two pilots. I can't remember two pilots though.
No, it was just one, but he was laying on the ground. He was still in his seat, and the chute was it was deployed, but apparently it didn't open.
Yeah, that's the one.
And we circled him for a while, and then I think we just circled him to keep gooks from getting to the body.
I believe so. I think it was purely just to protect it. Well, I think they wanted to protect the plane too. I'm not sure, but the plane was close by. I remember the plane was close by too. Because he didn't make it, and but I do remember it real well. I remember the chute just laying there.
Yeah.
Bimp, it wasn't.
Because I think you and I flew on a lot of the same missions.
Yeah, we did. We flew a lot together. We flew a whole lot together, actually. We spent a lot of time on missions together.
Okay, do you remember who your pilots were?
Oh, man. No, I really can't.
You know what? I can't either, and it really bugs me.
I remember us turning the mics off to them and sitting back there talking, and the pilots were never, part of that conversation usually.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the crew chief and I were doing our thing, and when the pilots came on and wanted us to do something, we'd snap it back on so we could talk back to them. But we had that ability, to talk.
Right.
And them not hear what we were saying, and that's how I remember that. And the biggest conversation I had with the pilots was whenever one of them didn't show up, and I was up in front with them. Then we had some conversation. I know one night I was flying, and the co-pilot didn't show up, and I was flying in the co-pilot's position, and I'm trying to think. I can't think who the other pilot was, but he told me to circle the area, and I got to circle in the area, and it got vertigo.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Everything was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And he had to take the controls back, and I kept turning to the left and kept banking more and more. But I remember that real well. But now I don't remember the pilots. I remember talking to the pilots more on the ground. I know a couple of them. One of them was from Martinsville, which is only 30 miles from here, and he had actually dated the girl that I knew that my wife was best friends with, and but he died. He's one of them that's dead now. Because I asked about him. I'm trying to think of his name. I asked about him.
Was that Wyatt?
Who?
Wyatt?
No, this was a real fair-haired fellow with light brown hair.
Yeah, well, Wyatt.
And he wasn't any older than I was. I mean, he was 20, 21 years old. but I can't remember the name now. And I want to say Fitzgerald or something like that, but that's not right.
No, Fitzgerald is, he's still alive, and he's in D.C.
Yeah. But anyway, so I knew, I had conversations through them with that. Yeah, I do remember Cantrell flying. I flew with him a lot.
Well, I think it was Cantrell that took me up on my initiation flight.
Yeah,
and,
he took me up too. He took everybody up. He had to be able to shoot the guns, which targets weren't that hard to hit. I mean, he had pretty big targets, I thought, for what I was what I was used to.
I think what he did with me, we threw an ammo box out, and I was supposed to shoot the ammo box, and then I think I shot some bomb craters.
Yeah, bomb craters were his big deal.
Yeah.
But and shoot the bomb craters.
And then after that,
if I can't hit a bomb crater, you better send me back in the back home.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
And then the other thing he did with me was he put the aircraft in all kinds of exaggerated, unusual maneuvers to see if he could make me sick.
Yeah.
And he couldn't make me sick. I loved it, man. It was fun.
Yeah, that was his. Yeah, he did everybody that came through. He was real particular about doing it. I remember that. And
now he died of cancer.
A lot of guys didn't like him. I don't know, what the reason was behind it, but
I don't know. He always treated me right. Gary Young just absolutely hates him, but he always treated me well. The only pilot that I didn't, well, there's two pilots I didn't like. I didn't like Johnson, but it wasn't because he was a bad guy or anything. He just flew too high. And then Brock. I just absolutely hated Brock.
Now, I don't think anybody liked Brock.
And do you remember when he came into the unit, he wanted us to have spit shine boots and starch fatigue?
He was Warrant Officer 3, wasn't he?
No, he was actually a gunner or a crew chief, and then he went back to the States and went to OCS and flight school and became a second lieutenant. Yeah.
Okay.
And which is why he came back.
Nobody liked him a whole lot.
Yeah. When he came back, they put him in charge because a warrant officer can't be in charge of a platoon, so he was the second lieutenant, and they put him in charge. And he wanted us to open the door and salute him when he got in the helicopter and, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Crazy stuff, huh? Yeah. You get shot telling somebody to salute you in Vietnam.
Well, Dick Groves and I, we decided that we had enough of him. And we were sitting in the mess hall one time, and we decided to start a rumor. And so we concocted this rumor, and we waited until two strange guys came and sat down at the table where we were. And I said to Dick, you hear what's going to, you hear about Brock? If he doesn't get his shit together and straighten up, he's going to get fragged. And that rumor spread. And just a few days later, we were on a mission, and he was the pilot, I was the gunner, and my gun jammed. And I didn't have an asbestos glove to take the barrel off, and I had the barrel outside, and I flipped the release up, and I had my foot against the front sight, trying to kick the barrel off.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't get it off, and I tried, and just nothing would get that barrel off. So I decided to bring it inside where I could, put both feet against the front of it and just pull as hard as I could backwards and get it off. And just as I brought it in, a round cooked off. And it hit Brock's seat. He swore that I was trying to kill him. But from that time on, he didn't give me any shit.
I bet not.
One of the other pilots told me that he wanted to court-martial me, and they talked him out of it. So, but he was useless as a pilot as far as I'm concerned. And he was the only one. The whole time the rebels were in existence, we never had a case of a friendly fire accident. We never hit anybody on the ground. Brock did. After I left, he was on a mission, and he did hit somebody on the ground, one of our guys. He only wounded him, but he did it. So.
Wow.
That's another thing that we can be proud of too. That we never hit any of our own. Do you remember the fight? It was an NDP they were getting overrun, and we got called into the fight, and they were telling us on the ground where to put our rounds, and it was at night, and we were making our gun passes, and all of a sudden they started calling up on the radio, ceasefire, you're hitting us.
They told us the wrong side of smoke.
Yeah, you remember that?
Yep, I do. They told, instead of east, it was west, and whoever that's on the ground had called for smoke east of fire east of the smoke, and that's where they were at.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
in reality, though, we weren't hitting them. It was just our brass falling down on them.
But now, the one I'm thinking about, we didn't hit anybody, but they actually called for the gun fire. The lieutenant on the ground actually called for the smoke. They throw smoke out,
Yeah.
and they tell you, east of the smoke or south of the smoke or
Right.
where the enemy was at. And he actually told us the wrong side, and so we make our first run through there, and we get this screaming coming back at us that he's shooting them, and so we verified the coordinates again, and he was wrong, and we fired the other side the second run, but we didn't hit anybody, thank goodness. But they actually called it on his own self instead on the enemy.
Yeah.
Now the one you're talking about, we shot on the right side. We just our shells were coming down and falling on the.
Right. Yeah. The hot brass from the miniguns was falling down on them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they have 10,000 rounds a minute. There's a lot of shells.
Yep.
You'd think it was raining. I used to love that at night too when miniguns were shooting in that red stream. I thought that was the coolest thing.
Yeah, and even the door guns at night. When you're shooting, you know how you would trail your target.
Oh yeah.
And the rounds would go down, and it would just appear to go down, and then just curve right into the target.
Yep.
That was really neat at night.
I always thought that was so cool. It's just, of course, that's the nighttime is the best time to see that red glow, and you can see how a round doesn't follow a straight line.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always thought that was pretty neat. Like I said, most of my thoughts go around things I enjoyed, and I try to do that in everything in my life, actually, instead of dwelling on the bad things that could pull you down, really, instead of helping.
Well, of all the people in our platoon, you were the one that was super straight. I don't remember you drinking, and you didn't smoke, and you didn't go to the village.
No, I didn't do any of that stuff.
For the same purposes as some of the rest of us did.
Yeah. No, I stayed pretty straight most of my life, I guess. So tried to anyway.
You did all right for yourself.
Try to stay to a principle anyway, but I like I said, I have mostly good memories. Even when I shot down, when you survive it, it's not a negative,
Yeah.
I mean, you're so happy to be alive. You don't even think about it.
Do you remember the night we were sitting in the hooch and Dick Groves was singing and playing guitar, and somebody was playing box, and you were there. I don't know what you were doing. Maybe you were playing box. I don't remember. But anyhow, I have that recording.
You're kidding.
I have it on reel-to-reel tape, and I just have no way to get it off.
That's a band thing. Y'all were going. Richard was going to sing at the. What was it? The Officers Club or something like that. They were having somebody come in.
I don't know.
Yeah, Richard was going to sing at something or other, and we were trying to do a little band thing. That's what it was.
Yeah, I have
Did
that
y'all
recording.
ever go to that? I didn't go to it. Did y'all go?
No, I didn't.
There were going to be some I remember the big deal was there was going to be some American nurses at it. I guess it was the USO
Yeah.
thing.
We must have been flying.
I do remember flying support for Bob Hope, and I remember him telling us to fly wider sweeps. There were helicopters making too much noise for the troops to hear what Bob was saying. And I remember us flying support as he flew to the next base. Do you remember that?
I kind of do, but I can't give details on it because I just don't remember.
You might
that
be on
much.
R&R. When'd you go on R&R?
I was in R&R from December 19th to December 24th.
Yep, you were on R&R. That's funny. I remember that. That's really
I got
odd.
married.
Right? Huh?
I got married on an R&R.
I guess I remember that too. But I remember you not being there because we flew. Because it was so funny. We were told we were going to fly support for Bob Hope, so I was all excited. Thought I was going to see Bob Hope, and come find out, I didn't see Bob Hope at all except for in a helicopter.
Yeah.
You know, a ways off. We were flying around the place where he's entertaining, but they made us go out so far so we wouldn't make any noise for the show. And then they made us come back in and support him to fly support for his helicopter going to the next place. And and they went down. We never saw anything but that.
Yeah.
You were on R&R is what it was.
The only thing I remember is flying. I don't know if it was a USO show or something. We flew support of, but I never saw anybody. I saw the helicopters, but I don't remember seeing anybody.
But somehow I remember something about. I remember you're talking about the drums and the singing and all that stuff. Because I thought Richard was going to sing at one of those things or something like that.
He had a good voice.
Yeah.
You know, he's dead.
He was very talented.
Yeah, he died a long time ago.
Yeah.
He committed suicide.
That's the word, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what his mother told me. I don't know if he did or not. You know, he was sending helicopter parts home, and when he got home, he bought a Corvette, and he used the cycling stick out of a helicopter for his gear shift, and he had his flight helmet and his gas mask. And he wrote me a letter one time saying that, you know, he would put the top down and drive around the streets with his gas mask, helmet on, and his cycling stick for his gear shift, and blowing people's minds.
Well, I already had a motorcycle when I went to Vietnam, but I came back and bought a Harley Davidson probably a year after I got out of the service, and I had the flight helmet.
Yeah.
That we had, and I painted a blue. I still have it, as a matter of fact, and I rode around in it on the motorcycle. So, you know, and it probably wouldn't have saved my life at all. It probably would have killed me if I'd had a wreck.
Yeah.
But I still have that helmet. That's the only thing I have left.
I have a flight suit, and that's it.
I'd love to have another flight suit. I'd love to have some of those gloves again.
Oh yeah, those gloves were nice.
I used those gloves to ride the motorcycle too. They were great for cool weather riding.
Yeah.
Because they went over your sleeves and everything. But I'd love to have some of those again. The flight suit. Those were nice things.
You know, my helmet. I came into the Rebels with my helmet. I bought it on the black market when I was waiting to
right.
get
You had
into the Rebels.
those round helmets, didn't you?
I had an original.
Inside of it.
A what?
Your visor was inside the helmet instead on the outside.
Right, yeah. Mine was an original Korean War jet jockey helmet.
Yeah,
and I just loved it. It fit so good. And when I got shot down, my helmet stayed with the chopper. And when I got evac'd out, you know, I just couldn't get it. And then they issued me the new ballistic helmet, and I hated that thing.
Yeah.
Oh, they were so big and uncomfortable.
Yeah, a different kind of helmet altogether.
Yeah. I told John and Tom when they went back to Vietnam last year to go find my helicopter and get my helmet back for me.
Another thing I wish I had done, of course, when you're 20 years old, these things never mean that much. But you remember the Arvins had collected all those weapons that we had supported them, and they offered us come and get anything we wanted.
Yeah.
You know, I wish to goodness I'd have got one of those things. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have one of those AK-47s. You'd have had to have it sealed so it wouldn't fire.
Yeah, I think what they do, pour lead down the barrel or something to make it in on.
Something they did so you could take it away with you.
Yeah.
But I'd love to have one of those things.
I would like to have an AK or an M1 carbine, M2 carbine, anything like that.
Yeah. And I didn't realize this until just recently. The AK-47 is largest manufactured assault rifle ever made.
Oh yeah, yeah,
They use them everywhere.
yeah.
And it's one of the best weapons ever made too. I know it had a distinct sound when you heard one go off.
Exactly. Yep. You could always tell an AK.
You knew immediately what
Yeah.
it was.
And the good thing about the AK is, you can get that dirty and it still fires.
That's what they say. They say they can use it anywhere, any place, and it just and I didn't realize this either. I mean, I carried an M16. In infantry, I carried an M16 with a grenade launcher underneath it, and I never had any problem with it. But they had problems with M16s jamming
Yeah.
in Vietnam,
Well-
and mine never did, thank goodness. But
Well, when they first came out, the majority of them had aluminum bolts.
yeah,
And when the aluminum bolt would get hot, it would jam.
yeah.
And then they switched over to the steel bolts, and then they were okay.
That's exactly what it was. They were, and actually the Kennedy administration, was, some hot shots decided that the aluminum was cheaper, and the military didn't balk them on it, and then they had turned around and corrected. And I guess I must have not had an aluminum bolt. I never had one. And I fired mine as much as anybody did. And
Yeah.
I never had a problem with it jamming.
Well,
Like I said, I wish I'd have had the foresight at 20 years old to have gotten one of those weapons and kept it.
Yeah. I know somebody got one and sent it home and made a lamp out of it.
I mean, well, I wouldn't have done that with it, but to have been at a location where we really had a major battle at that we knew we were instrumental in,
Yeah.
and to be able to have that souvenir right now would mean a whole lot to me.
Yeah.
It didn't at 20 years old, but it would now,
Well, at 20 years old, you just want to get out of there.
Yeah, that's right. Most of the time you don't even take half stuff serious, and which is probably good because it makes it a lot easier to do.
Did you have any guilt feelings when you came back about, leaving the other guys there?
I felt bad about it because you like seeing everybody leave at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I never felt bad when the guys left before me though, But I felt bad about it when I did.
Yeah, I felt the same. I really wanted to be home, but
And
at
I
the
really
same
felt
time, I
bad.
felt bad.
And I really felt bad when I got the letter from Richard, telling me all the bad things that happened after I left. I got that letter still. I still have a letter Richard wrote me telling me who got shot and all the things that happened after I left.
Okay, when did you leave?
I left in February
Oh, okay, okay.
and like I said, right in the middle of the Tet Offensive, and y'all were still heavily engulfed in it after I left.
Yeah.
And Richard wrote me a letter, and I still have the letter. It's got, I don't remember it not. We used to get 006 and 005. James Bond was big then.
Yeah, yeah.
Each one of us had I forget which we were now, but anyway, the three of us were somewhere in the 00s. And, but I got that letter still to this day.
Did he tell you about me getting shot down?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's in the letter. I got the letter, and like I said, he tells me everything that happened after I left.
Yeah.
It was like that everything broke loose, and you feel kind of bad, Well, I got out, But yeah, Vivian had the foresight to keep that letter. I have to credit her with that. I read it and put it down, and she folded it up and put it away, and I haven't read it in a long time now, but
Yeah, I still have all mine. I have, Dick wrote me a letter after he got out of the Army. I still have that. And then I have a letter from Rebel 36, and I don't know who it was, but he wrote me a letter saying that they missed me, and since I left, no one keeps their guns as clean as I did. But I don't know who Rebel 36 was.
I don't know about
It was one of the officers. But I still have that letter.
Yeah.
And I read it every now and then, just to remember what it once was.
Yeah. Yeah, we were young one time, weren't we?
Yeah. Like Like that movie, We Were Soldiers Once? Well, we were rebels once.
Yeah, yeah. It's a short time in your life, but it carries on for a long time.
Yep, yep.
If you look at it from the scheme of your whole life, it was a short period.
But for me, it was most memorable.
Well, I guess when you think about the circumstances, it makes it more memorable because of that.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's what it comes down to. And I remember when I was 15 years old, listening to my father-in-law, my father, talk about World War II. You know, and I'm looking at them, and you guys are in your 50s now. What are y'all talking about? Something happened when you were 19, you know.
Yeah.
But now.
Now you know.
Now I know. And,
yeah.
I understand.
And you know the camaraderie that we had.
Oh yeah.
You never find that in civilian life, or at least I haven't.
No. Well, you won't find it. You won't find it because you're not in a life-threatening situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when you live in those situations and you're actually together 24 hours basically every day, and something's happening all the time, and you just remember the things, you know, and it makes you, it draws. Like I said, it probably broke my heart as much as anything when I heard about Groves dying, because I always thought the three of us were pretty tight.
Yeah. And you know, of all the people in our platoon, I figured Dick was going to be the one that was going to really go somewhere.
He was the most level-headed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, and had it all together. You know, it's just amazing to me that you know, I'm not sure what happened. I don't know.
Well, his mother said, you know, he was skydiving and intentionally didn't open his chute, but you know, that maybe or may not be true. I don't know.
Yeah.
He just didn't strike me as someone who was going to be depressed over Vietnam or anything else.
No, me either. No, he didn't me either. I didn't see that at all, and you know, he wasn't a gung ho type person as far as Vietnam was concerned. Matter of fact, he could have even been a pacifist.
Well, he was, and for that reason, a couple of people, Dennis Hall especially, didn't like him. He called him the old hippie, and but you know, Dennis was a kill crazy guy, and Dick wasn't. You know, he went up and did his job, but he didn't gloat over it.
No.
And
we had a couple that were nutcases over that, you know.
Yeah, well, Dennis Hall was one, and
whatever happened to Dennis Hall? Remember, he cut his hand, was loading the.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you know, he was already on something, and they gave him something, and it just tipped him right on over to the.
He was doing acid, and he cut his hand. Well, Dennis got out, and for a while he was the bodyguard for Frank Sinatra, and then apparently he beat somebody up pretty bad one time, and he got fired. And then he went to robbing banks, and he's been in prison 4 times.
Are you kidding me?
No, this is true. He's been in prison 4 times, and then last time he got out of prison, he met this Hawaiian model, and fell in love and got married, and now he's got a little 6-year-old girl, and he has totally turned his life around.
Wow.
You know,
he's I didn't think he lived that long.
Yeah, really. The other guy that was kill crazy was Katz. Remember Katz?
I'm trying to think of him. What did he look like?
He's kind of pudgy. He had kind of dirty blonde hair. I think he might have had a crew cut or a flat top, maybe.
That's a little familiar. And we had one guy from California that was kind of like a hippie, really. But he had dark hair, though. Can't remember his name. He was the one smoking pot in the barracks all the time.
Who was that?
We turned the stereos on, and they'd have that place full of smell of pot. I'm trying to think of his name now.
I don't remember who that could have been.
I remember faces. I can't remember if they put names with them.
Now Now Kilgore, remember Kilgore?
Oh yeah.
And who was his crew chief?
I don't know. I remember him.
Well, both of them, they went chicken, and they got out of the rebels. Both of them went at the same time.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, Kilgore and what the heck was this other guy? His crew chief's name?
I remember him. He was there when I left.
Yeah, they got out.
Man, he must not have been from the infantry then.
I don't know where he came from.
I thought the rebels was like a vacation from coming out of the infantry.
Oh, I tell you, it was nice. I mean, not having any duty.
Yeah, those guys didn't know what it really was like.
Yeah.
Not the shooting part, the physical drain of energy and no sleep and lousy food, and I mean it's just.
We had a shower every day. We had good food.
Yeah.
Our life expectancy wasn't as long.
Had a hooch girl clean the place for us.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, we had it made.
Yeah, he must not have been from the infantry though. I could stand it getting shot at, but I couldn't stand digging a foxhole every night.
Yeah.
Man, that's the last thing I want to do ever again.
I didn't like being dirty all the time.
I know it. I mean, you sweat all day and then it dries at night in the cool. And because I was in the 1st Division and we had the debut foxhole had to be dug every. If you stop for anything, you had to start digging a foxhole.
Yeah.
I mean, I was tired, sweaty, and cold at night. Had chills at night from the cool air after you get those hot days and filthy and yeah, that was not my thing.
Well, unlike you, I didn't come from the infantry. I re-enlisted to be a gunner on a helicopter gunship, and the Army, in its typical fashion, had a typographical error on my MOS, and because in civilian life I worked for the military as a sentry dog handler, and so they screwed that MOS up and they put me in the MPs. And it didn't take them long to discover that I was not MP material. And so they put me in the infantry platoon that was attached to the 1st MP company. And what I mostly did, stood in the back of a Jeep with a machine gun doing convoy escorts until I got my transfer into the rebels. So I didn't have that infantry experience that you had. And I'm glad I didn't. Well, actually, no, I kind of wish I would have had the experience, but...
I don't have many good memories of the infantry. As a matter of fact, I very seldom ever dwell on anything in the infantry.
Yeah. Do you ever meet any of the guys that were in your infantry unit?
Yeah. Yeah, I got, there's one in Kentucky, that Earl Babbitt, he and I came into Vietnam 2 days before he did, so he came to my unit after I'd been in 2 days, and we, as a matter of fact, when I was in infantry, I've been out there probably about 60 days, and I got a rash, and the rash wouldn't go away, so they sent me in to get treatment, get ointments for it. And Earl and I have been in the same unit, and that in infantry you're together 24 hours a day. You never leave that person. So,
yeah.
So we knew each other very well. So I went in, and the XO, who never goes out with the infantry, by the way, the XOs always stay in home base. We were sitting around talking while they were getting me treatment. And I was talking about how much I hated digging a foxhole and being tired all the time. I didn't care if I got shot at. No, I was just tired. And he said, well, you ought to post out. And cause I didn't know you could do that. And he gave me a stack of forms. And he said, post for everything and anything. He said, send them all back in. He said, I'll send them off. So I went back into the unit the next day. I had this stack of forms. And the first chance we got a chance to stop, I gave Earl half those forms. and we filled out everything in the world we could think of. And so I really didn't want to be necessarily want to be a gunship gunner. It was just one of the jobs that I knew I could do. Well, Earl put down that he was a cook, and Earl had never cooked anything a day in his life. I want you to know, I was in the Rebels 2 weeks, and I run into Earl. He's cooking there on base. And so after we got through Vietnam, Vivian and I drive down to Texas. I got to finish 4 months in the military. So they got us in Texas, and I go down to Texas, and I go in to sign into my company, and there's the cook, Earl. He and his wife were down there, so we spent a little time together with them during that 4-month period. And he's been by here twice over the last 40 years, I guess. And we've been at his place out in Louisville many years ago, but we still we don't talk. It's really funny. He sends Christmas cards, and the Christmas cards he puts a note, how many kids he had and how many grandkids and all this stuff. And he don't have any grandkids, excuse me. Anyway, he got a couple of girls, and I send him a Christmas card and tell him what I got, and that's about it. We don't really talk though. It's really funny, and I think it's because in infantry you don't have conversations. It's really funny because when you're awake, you're doing something.
Yeah.
And when you're not doing something, you want to sleep. And when you're in the field, you're away from each other because you don't walk on the side of each other. You walk, well, in that time you walked in kind of a bird fashion, winged out. And
Yeah.
it kept winging out. The unit kept winging out to spread out throughout a large area. And so I think that must be the reason why we don't really talk a lot, because maybe we never did talk a lot.
Were you in any major battles when you were in the infantry?
I was in two.
Yeah.
Two. And most of the things I was in were small skirmishes. We used to seal the village at night. We go in just at dusk and seal the village, and we stay there all night long. And the firefight usually right when one was trying to get in or get out of the village. We'd have a firefight in the middle of the night, and you couldn't see what's going on, what's happening.
Was that a company-size formation?
Yeah. And we had skirmishes. I had pulled on a road one time and had a Claymore mine to not go off. That would have been the demise of me if it had.
One of theirs.
One of theirs, yeah. They pulled it and it didn't do anything, so they started shooting at us. But luckily, the Claymore mine didn't go off because I was pulling on a road sweep. But and most of the time in infantry, unlike what these heroes might want to tell somebody, you walk and you walk and you go through this and you go through that and you don't sleep. You stay up all night long. You go on ambush patrol and all this stuff. You're dog tired. When you finally get shot at, you're so tired you want to lay down and go to sleep.
Yeah.
So it's not like the John Wayne movies where your energy level's great and you're waiting for it when you're looking for it. Never happened. Not in my experience, anyway. But
When it happens.
most of my memories aren't. I remember good times about that too. I remember us getting a few days to come in and having the first sergeant fixing steaks and chicken and all that stuff for us. So we were in for one day and things like that.
What base camp were you out of?
Zion.
Oh, Zion. Okay.
Yeah.
I was at Zion. Well, I was at Zion for probably about 3 weeks, and then they transferred me up to Like A.
Yeah, Zion's a pretty nice base.
Yeah, Zion. I don't think Zion ever got hit until the Tet Offensive did it.
Well, I wouldn't know. I wasn't there but 2 days, and the whole time I was in the infantry.
Oh.
I came back to get my foot to get my rash fixed, and I came back one time and had steaks for a day or two. But most of the time, the infantry didn't stay around. So I never know what was happening in Zion. They put us in troop helicopters and fly us off somewhere in the jungle. And we were in, most of the time we were in the C zone, the jungle, you know, where you killed anything that moved.
Yeah.
And so I never saw civilization. I went 60 days and didn't see anything that resembled civilization.
Yeah.
But like I said, most of us spent walking and not sleeping and tired.
Well.
But that was my experience with the infantry. It wasn't. I mean, we were in one day picking up new troops. We had to sleep on bunks one night, I guess it was. And the next day we're fixing to get ready to go out again, and they brought new troops in to go out with us, and it was always in and out. And I'm laying in a bunk bed, and one of the new guys was cleaning his gun and killed one of our guys.
Oh man.
That's the most horrible thing I remember in Vietnam, and hit him right in the head. I mean, and they made that guy a cook. That guy never went out to the troops. He stayed in with the cooks.
Man, that's terrible.
But, that's the one thing I guess that sticks. That probably sticks me as far as the horror goes. If I have a nightmare, that one probably sticks more than anything. In fact,
Yeah.
I mean, it was so useless, you know.
You know, the one for me that I think about a lot is, and I'm kind of like you. I don't dwell on the bad stuff. But there was this one night that the medevac ship, an NDP had gotten overrun, and the medevac ship wouldn't go in and pick up a wounded guy because there was still fire coming in. And we had, after we expended our ammo, we landed and picked up this one kid, and he was just a pudgy guy and pale skin, and he looked like he was brand new in country. You know, he didn't have that tan that you had after you were there for a while.
Yeah, that's right.
And his shirt was open. He had all these little slits in his belly and his chest, but there's no blood. And he was crying out for his mama, and I was holding his hand, and I was telling him he was going to make it. You know, he's going to be okay. And he died on the way to I guess we went to Benoit. I'm not sure. And he died, and he was holding my hand so tight I had to pry his hand off of mine. And I think about that quite a bit.
Yeah, those kind of memories are hard to shake.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah. But other than that, I'm kind of like you. I think about the good stuff.
I wondered how they told that boy's parents or his family what happened to him, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I think in Vietnam they lied a lot. I think they told me it was hostile fire a lot of times.
Yeah.
And,
Well, in this case it was. But
yeah?
in this case it was hostile fire.
Yeah, in your case it was, you know, but the other situation I was talking about,
Yeah.
you know, I know in infantry, an artillery round came out and came in and hit one of our guys sitting on top of the foxhole.
Were you in the rebels when one of our let's see, I think it was the crew chief. Remember the guy named Heater? He was clearing a minigun, and he shot, I don't know if it was a gunner or a crew chief right in the head. Killed him.
Oh no, I wasn't there for that one.
Yeah. It must have been before you got there. It was before I got there.
Yeah, I don't remember. I didn't know that one. Like I say, I fired around one time and scared me and everybody around. We were at the refueling place, reloading, refueling, and I turned that thing and it went around and stuck in there. But that's the only, that was, scared me to death. I remember that.
I don't think I ever fired one off, but I remember, I think every time that I'll get out and clear the gun, expecting it, you know, and
I mean,
hoping
you know,
it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, it was always a fear of a jam anyway, you know.
Yeah.
And one just sitting there. That's why I always straddled it, instead of, straddle that thing when you turn it. So
That's what I did. I straddled mine every time.
yeah, that way you didn't have to worry about it whether it hits you or not. Now, I remember, and I can't remember Quanloy that well. I remember we didn't have true barracks up there.
No, well, we didn't have barracks there or Like
That's right.
We slept under the ship.
We didn't have. They had tents, didn't they?
Oh, I slept in the ship.
I'm trying to think where we slept at, because I don't remember that at all. So I'm trying to remember. And I think Like A is the one that had the temporary. One of them had the refueling section was really not very sophisticated.
Well, Quanloy, I think he just had the bladders on the ground, didn't he?
That's what it was. It was Quanloy. And I remember watching a helicopter explode, go up in the air, and land on its top, right there at the refuel place. And I don't know if the guy was smoking a cigarette or what happened, but that sucker flat out blew up right there on the refuel.
Well, sometimes when I'm talking to Gary Young, he talks about the tents that we slept in at Quanloy or Like A. I don't remember which one it was.
Yeah, that's what I said. We slept in tents somewhere.
I don't remember them. Every time that we were ROing at Like A or Quanloy, I always remember staying by the ship. Either the crew chief would sleep inside and I would sleep under, or vice versa.
I remember tents somewhere. I can't remember where it was at. I also remember they had movies going wherever it was at, in one of the tents. I remember that for some reason, and that may have been one isolated time that happened. But I do remember some tents. But I thought Like A was a little bit better than Quanloy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But both of them were motor magnets.
Yeah. Quanloy's where the rubber trees were at too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, Like A had rubber trees too.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. On the I guess it would have been on the on the east side of the runway was a rubber plantation, and that's where most of the infantry camped out. And then on the west side of the runway was Like A village.
Believe it or not, but I camped out there as an infantryman before I went into the gunships.
Oh, really?
I sure did.
And Like A is where they had 6 o'clock Charlie. Remember him? Every night at 6 o'clock, he'd take a pot shot at somebody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Never hit anybody.
I hadn't been in Vietnam but a few days when we went up there and camped out next to that. Because I remember we were setting up again, and it was crazy. The infantry was the craziest thing in the world about setting up. And here we are, trying to set up everything. I remember Sergeant chewing my butt out for making too much noise, But I forget what I was doing, but I was making too much noise for him. But yeah, I actually saw that place in two different times, 2 different ways.
Quanloy was a place that every night at dusk they would have the Mad Minute, where everybody on the perimeter would fire their guns at the same time. Remember that?
Nope.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was Quanloy. And Quanloy, it was also the place where they had that big. They had a French mansion up there with a swimming pool.
Oh yeah, that I do remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the rubber trees were at. It was a rubber plantation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
And they had all those really beautiful French Vietnamese girls around there.
I don't remember that.
Oh, I remember one in particular. Yeah, good times. There was something else I wanted to say, and I forgot what it was. Oh, you were talking about the movies. This is a funny story of my own. Let's see, I guess it was March 3rd of '68. I don't remember where I was, but I was watching a movie of these little tents. And it was the movie, remember the movie Good, Bad, and the Ugly?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the theme song for that, I don't know if you remember it or not, but
Oh, yeah.
it's all instrumental. Well, I'm watching that movie, and at the end of the movie, they're trying to destroy some Germans inside I guess it was a big mansion that had a bunker in or something, and they're throwing grenades down the ventilation pipes, and they're running, and the Germans are shooting at them. Well, this guy named Vladik gets killed. Now, the name Vladik is a made-up name. My family is the only name with the name Vladik in the United States. So this guy in the movie, his movie name was Vladik, he gets killed. And I just took that as an omen. The next day, we're on a people sniffer mission, and get shot down. And on the way down, I'm thinking about this. And you know, we hit, and, you know, I broke my back and all this stuff. But
Yeah.
that was so strange that all the way to the ground, I'm thinking about this damn guy Vladik in the movie getting killed, and now it's my turn.
And now here I am going down.
Yeah.
A lot of things cross your mind when you go with that.
Yeah.
The things going down.
But about that theme song, there was another fight we were in that it lasted days, and at night they were shooting everything they had at us. Anti-aircraft guns. There was a quad 12.7 that had opened up on my ship at one time, and you know, we just kept going to the fight, and then we go to the nearest base camp and rearm and refuel. And when we would land at, I think it might have been Tay Ninh, when we would land, they had Red Cross girls bringing us coffee and donuts and sandwiches, and they had cooks and anybody that they could get their hands on coming out and linking minigun ammo for us and door gun ammo and loading rockets. And this fight was it was terrible. And every time we get back and rearm and refuel on the way back to the fight, I think, you know, my luck's got to run out. You know, I just can't continue living through this. And the last time up, it was at night, and the pilots turned the radio to Hanoi Hana. And I'm really, you know, I'm preparing myself to die. And they turned the radio to Hanoi Hana, and she was playing the theme song from The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. And that music just got me up, and it was like, okay, bring it on. You know, maybe I'm going to die, but I'm going to take as many of you guys with me as possible. And that got me through it, you know. It's strange how little things like that happen, you know.
Yeah. You know, you're talking about the gun barrels, and we used to melt them a lot. I remember that. When I came home in February of '68, I had both my wrists had gotten burned by changing gun barrels out on the inside of my wrist. And so they had them wrapped whenever I left Vietnam, and of course we had commercial flights, you know, all the way to the States.
Yeah, Braniff.
And all the way, and of course from California all the way over to here to this area over here, and where I flew to. And I remember so well because I was real skinny, of course, at that time. Cause we didn't have any weight on us, and I remember the weight. The stewardesses just kept bringing me food. I mean, it was like here I was taped up, both wrists taped up a little bit, you know, and scrawny looking little kid, and they just felt sorry for me. And I remember eating all the way from Vietnam to Greensboro Airport. I mean, it didn't matter what plane I got on, and I had to make 2 or 3 changes. They just kept on taking care of me. It was really, and that was, of course, when I hit San Francisco, I got booed and spit on and everything else. But when we got off the plane, but I remember the trip being very pleasant with all the stewardesses taking care of me.
You know what I remember about coming back is they were Braniff Airlines, and the stewardesses, every one of them was good looking.
Yeah.
Super good looking, and they all had on these super short skirts.
Yeah. And they were big on short skirts then.
Right, and they would be raising up to those little things overhead, you know, and putting the pillows in, and those mini dresses would be rising up, and oh God, what a trip that was. And I was thinking, you know, I made it through Vietnam. I just need to make it across this big body of water now.
Well, did you land in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Did you get off get out of the? Well, I can't remember where I was at, but they had groups sitting there waiting to boo us.
Well, when I got off the plane, I went directly to the bathroom and took my uniform off, put on Levi's and a civilian shirt, and threw my uniform in the trash can.
No, I flew uniform all the way home.
Because I had heard about that stuff happening, and I just didn't want to be part of it.
It was an eye-opener for me. That's the first time I'd ever experienced anything, or thought anything like that was going on, to be honest with you. You hear about it, but you don't
Yeah.
live it. But yeah, it was pretty ugly.
Well, you know, people talk about, you know, us guys having problems being in Vietnam. I don't have any problems with Vietnam. I have an attitude, but it didn't come from Vietnam. It came from coming back from Vietnam and being treated the way we were. You know, when I got out of the Army, I tried to get a job, and as soon as, you know, answering ads in the paper, as soon as you know, when you had on there that you'd been in the Army in your application, as soon as they asked you if you were in Vietnam, you said yes, the job wasn't available to you.
I mean, it was really strange, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I remember going to the unemployment office one time in Baltimore, and there's this black guy sitting at the desk next to me, and he's wearing orange pants, orange shirt, orange tie, orange suit coat, orange shoes, orange socks, a big orange fedora hat. They're offering this guy everything in the world, and he's not even speaking English. And they're offering me janitorial work because I'm not qualified to do anything because my MOS was infantry. Man, you know, I just couldn't. I got a bad attitude from that.
Yeah, it was a little eye-opening. I thought about that. It really was.
You know, when I would hear my uncles and my father talk about coming back from World War II, they were greeted as heroes, you know. And I didn't care if I was greeted as a hero or not, but I wanted to be treated like a human being, and it just wasn't happening. You know, we were crazy, drugged-out baby killers, and that's all people thought about us.
Had a pretty bad rap, didn't we?
Well, I said screw society, and I just accomplished things on my own. I've been self-employed most of my life doing one thing or another. Even when I was flying, I was flying for someone, but I was pretty much my own boss.
That's pretty cool.